The glitz and glam is the fame, but it's the work backstage that makes the game. I'm Crystel and Bandal, your host. Come with me behind the lens and watch their stories unfold. He's a professional runway model coach who's worked with both national and international models. And with over 20 years of industry experience, he's collected memories from being a backup dancer, an elite gymnast, and a competitive acrobat, and also tap dancer, ballet dancer. Whatever you can imagine, he's done it. Today, we're interviewing Quintin James. We'll be discovering his childhood memories and how he's become interested in a career in performing arts. Hello, Quintin James. Welcome to Behind the Lens.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I think what we'll do first is to allow the audience to know you better. What was your childhood like?
My childhood was a typical Australian childhood. Riding bikes in the summer, always out with friends, playing. I had an older brother that used to give me hell, as older siblings do. Yeah. I was never inside, very active child, always out, as I say, riding bikes, playing games, playing soccer, just a typical Aussie kid.
Mm-hmm. So you were very athletic. How did you end up getting into performing arts as a child?
Well, I was a competitive gymnast first, so, well actually that's not true. I was a soccer player but hated it, so I don't tell anyone that. Okay. Yeah, so I played soccer for a little while. My dad was the coach of a soccer club, a soccer team. My brother, amazing soccer player. I was not good. I was fast but not good and hated it. And so one of my cousins was a dancer. She did dancing. We used to go watch her perform all the time. And I remember turning around to my mum and saying, I want to do that. And she was like, okay, you sure? And then I was like, yeah, I definitely want to do that. So she got me into gymnastics first, and I got my feelers in with gymnastics, and then did that for 2-3 years. And then I was like, yeah, I definitely want to dance. So then I took up dancing as well.
Yeah. So when you're a gymnast, you also ended up learning how to dance. Is that also the same classes? Like
no. So I was an actual competitive gymnast, so not an acrobat, an actual gymnast where the guys do rings, bars, vault, floor work, everything. So like what you see in the Olympics, that's what I was going for at first. And where I used to do gymnastics, there was a dance studio as well. Yeah. And so I used to always go in and watch them dance as well. And I was like, if I'm going to go anywhere, I want to at least try that. Mm-hmm. So I would do gymnastics, and then say 2-3 nights a week, I would do my gymnastics. And then on the Saturday, I would, after my gymnastics training from 7:30 till 12, I would then go do dance classes. And I just fell in love with dance. And then at one point I was like, I can't do these two things together. Like as much as they go together, I couldn't really be an elite gymnast and a great dancer. And my mum was the same. She's like, you've got to choose. And I chose gymnastics, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, I chose gym over dance because I was doing it longer, and I was like, I want to do this. And then after injury after injury after injury, I was like, there's no money in this.
Oh no.
And I'm getting hurt all the time. And I was like, I want to get back into that performing arts side, and started doing dance more full time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were initially going to be a gymnast. You wanted to be a professional gymnast, and you were.
Yeah, I was a competitive gymnast, for a while.
And then what made you turn? All the injuries? The
injuries, yeah. I ended up down at the Australian Institute of Sport competing for Commonwealth Games trials, and I just kept getting injured. And I was at a point where I'm like, I'm gonna end up in a wheelchair, I think. Like, this was not going the way I wanted it to. So at about 18, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I just stopped and went back to dance, acting, singing, everything, threw myself back into performing arts. And thought, well, I can use my gymnastic skill somewhere down the line. I knew I could do that. Whereas I knew if I left my opportunity to get into dance too late, I might miss that boat. Yeah.
When you initially had to choose though, why did you go for gymnastics?
I asked myself that question too. I think because I was doing it longer and I was doing really well at it, and I'd only sort of just started dance, a couple of years before that, and I was still finding my way, I think, with dance. Whereas gym, I'd been doing it for a good 4 or 5 years before that, and I didn't want to let my coach down. actually. That's what it comes down to. I built a really good family unit in the gymnastics world at that club, and he'd worked so hard and my parents had worked so hard to get me to that spot. I'm like, I've got to do everything I can for them as much as for myself. Looking back, I think it was more for them than it was for me, but I thought I have to do this now.
Yeah.
And also the shelf life of a gymnast is really short. Like, competitive wise, you don't have a long career.
So it was definitely more of an external pressure,
yeah,
rather than an internal decision.
Yeah, and I was good at it. You know, I was good at it, so I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
But as I said, after a while, having injury after injury, and then it starts to get into your head. You know, like I'm doing 3 somersaults in the air over a bar or something like that, and you don't have the time to think.
Yeah.
And when you start to get into a negative headspace, it's like, well, this is not a good thing. Let's go and dance.
There's really no time for hesitation when you're up there.
No time for hesitation. No time for thinking. It's all just feeling. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you have to really memorize everything.
Yeah, you've just got to go with the flow, and you've got to know what you're doing. And I think it comes down to trust. You've got to trust yourself. And with sports like that, when you start to not trust yourself, that's when things start to fall apart. Yeah.
And I guess trusting yourself also goes with everything in life too.
It does.
What made you, how did you end up going back into dancing? Who inspired you to push you towards that direction?
Well, when I decided to finish competitive gymnastics, I went back to my old dance studio.
Yeah.
And I just walked back in and said, I want this. Do what you can for me. I ended up at a studio which is no longer there, called Dynamite Dance Studio, which was run by David Atkins, which in the 90s, he was like the biggest male performer in the country. So he was an amazing choreographer, producer, dancer, phenomenal. And he's like me, short.
No.
So I was like, yes, he's my idol. Yeah, and I went to this studio with another friend of mine, which was based in the city at Central. I'd catch a train in, I'd go and do all my classes and then catch the train back. And I had these amazing teachers, ballet teachers, dance teachers, hip hop teachers, all sorts of things. And they just all inspired me to go, this is where I'm meant to be. Going into that studio, although it was daunting, I kind of felt like I was home. Yeah.
That's good. That's what you're after, especially if you're looking into a career.
Yeah.
Were you always after a career in performing arts?
Yeah, I wasn't very academic.
Oh, really?
Nah, so I hated school, to be honest. My favourite was recess and lunch. I just didn't like school at all. And I think because my headspace was never there, I was always, even in the classroom, I was thinking gymnastics, or I was thinking dance, or I was thinking other things.
Yeah.
And I was like, this academic thing, it's just taking up my time. I need to be in the gym, I need to be in the dance studio.
Yeah.
So for me, I was a natural gymnast and I was a natural dancer, so things came, I had to work really hard, but things were a little bit easier for me, I think, as well. So I didn't have to think, I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And I just was like, how am I going to do it now? That's all. I knew that's where my future was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it came with ease as well, because it sounds like that's where your passion was from the very start.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I surrounded myself with people that inspired me and pushed me and were honest with me as well. Honesty was the big thing for me, being honest. Like I mentioned David Atkins, and I was in one of his classes and he came to me and goes, you have no turnout, you have no ballet training, you're terrible at this. I know. And I was like, you're my idol. What? But that was exactly what I needed, because then I got enrolled into ballet and I became full-time ballet for 2-3 years, and that's what pushed my technique where it needed to go, which allowed me then to do all the other things that I can do now. Otherwise, there's no way I would have been able to do it.
That's good. Well, then that honesty still turned out to be a blessing.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still look up to him today?
Absolutely. All those teachers I had back then, I still look up to. If they're ever around doing workshops or talks or seminars, I'm there, for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You still have that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I made so many friends in those years at those studios, you know, people I ended up touring with, people I did shows with, people I ended up doing choreography for. It was just, it became a family, and those, especially around that time, that sort of 90s, in the 90s, 80s, 90s, I'm showing my age, around then, it was, you really got involved with the group, you know, and you really supported each other. It was competition, of course, but we really pushed each other and we really supported each other, which is important. Yeah.
How long did it take for you, when you were dancing, how long did it take for you to get up on stage and actually perform?
Well, being part of a dance studio, that's what you do. You do your classes and then you do your shows. So we would, I was on stage at the age of 10, 11, doing, the dancing school concerts and competitions. And at that studio, I think I was about 15, they asked me to do my first professional show. We had a casting person come out, we got booked to do a professional show, a charity show. And also with that studio, I started doing teaching. So being on stage was natural for me. I'd been doing it from an early age. And even as a gymnast, you're doing competition, but you're presenting yourself, you're on stage. So with dance, I'd started quite young still, like 10 or 11. I was on stage all the time. Each year I was been on stage 4 or 5 times. So going into that professional world wasn't that much different for me.
So you started dancing at 10. When did you start doing gymnastics then?
When I was 7.
Wow, that is so young. And you realised that very early on, that was not going to go anywhere.
Well, I realised because I had to make a decision going from year 10 into year 11 when I was about 15, 16, what am I going to do? And I knew I didn't want to go to year 12. I was like, we've had this discussion. This is not going to happen. So then my thing was, what do I do? And because I chose gymnastics, I got offered a placement down the Institute of Sport. So that's when I left home and went to Canberra and studied that. So I just knew that's what I wanted at that point. But as I said, I was a natural at it.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I was hyperactive. So my mum was like, you need to stop moving. We'd go to the shops and I'd be doing cartwheels and things like that. She's like, I'm embarrassed, just stop. I think that was why she got me into an active sport, because I was always running around the house. I was always flipping and doing things and climbing trees. Yeah. She's like, you need to be in a circus or you need to do something with this energy because it's driving me mental. And so I think that's why the gymnastics, and I think that's why I was naturally good at it, because it channeled my energy into something that I could already sort of do, and then I learnt the technique to do it. And it's the same with dance. I had some ability there, and then I just needed the right people around me to go, right, we need to turn this into something.
Yeah.
And the hard work for me to want to do it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely is.
Yeah.
So with dancing, I know that there's a lot of different categories. What did you start with?
I just started with jazz.
And then you just went on?
Yeah, I started with jazz for quite a while, because the studio I went to was a smaller studio that didn't offer classical ballet. Which is why when I got to somewhere like David Atkins, he was like, what are you doing? That's where I knew, okay, there's more out there, I have to go and do more. So I just started with jazz, a little bit of tap, lyrical and contemporary sort of stuff, and then it wasn't until I was 17, 18 when I'd finished the gymnastics that I went and did some full-time performing arts and really focused more on the classical ballet side and the acting and things like that. Yeah.
How long were you a student for before you became a teacher?
Well, I was pushed into teaching quite early. I was started at that studio quite young, and then by 14
really?
I started teaching my first class.
What were you teaching back then?
Jazz.
Jazz, and that's where you started as well? Yeah.
So I was given a junior class to teach to see if I could do choreography and how I handle it. And then I was given an adult mums class because they're just there for fun. Yeah. So that was another tester for me, like how can you handle working with adults and coming up with choreography. And then I ended up being a teacher for that studio for a while. And that's what also helped me move forward in my career, to be able to teach at different studios throughout my whole career.
Yeah. Did you like teaching?
I love teaching. I think because I like to talk, and I like to take what I've learnt and pass it on. Yeah. I think that's one of my big passions. Is if you have knowledge, your job is to give that to someone else. Don't hold it in to yourself. Which is why, and that was drilled into me by these performers that I worked with at Dynamite with David Atkins. Is these were amazing dancers, amazing choreographers that have done so many different things, but they were all about passing that information on to our students. So I was inspired then to go, okay, well, if I've got this, how do I help the next generation do what they've got to do? Because without that information, they're not going to get where they've got to go.
That's so good. That's what makes a good teacher, I think.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you were with the people that you were around with, you also, part of your background was that you were touring around the world, performing. What was that like?
Fun. It was crazy. It was awesome. I went to some amazing countries. I've danced with some celebrities, singers, danced in dance companies in London and contemporary companies in London and Scotland. I've danced for Kylie, Mary Keane, who's a UK singer, all sorts of different people. So it was an amazing experience. I can't fault it. It was just, I was on a cruise ship at 21, and I didn't stop for like 10 years. You know, so it was amazing.
What were you doing in the cruise ship? Were you just like performing?
Yeah, dancing, a dancer.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Who opened up the opportunity for you to kind of do it more professionally?
Well, I started actually teaching for a studio called Brent Street, and then they had an agency. So I had no real idea, besides what I'd known, is how do I get into this industry as a performer. And I was a really shy kid as well. So as a young kid, I would not speak to a person. So that was another reason for performing arts for me. I think my mum was like, you know, you don't talk. Now you can't shut me up, clearly. But you don't talk. So we need to get you into something where you feel you can put on a character, I guess. And acting was a big thing for me. So to help me come out of my shell and learn how to interact with people. And sometimes I was putting on a character, but at least I was doing that. So that studio I was teaching for had an agency, as I said, and they turned to me one day and said, do you want to go on a cruise ship? And I was like, doing what? They went performing in shows. I was like, I'm not going to say no. So I literally turned up to my 21st birthday 2 hours late because I was at a casting, walked in and went, okay, I leave in 3 days, I'm going on a cruise ship, see you in 6 months.
Wow.
And everyone was like,
that was like your big announcement.
That was. It was like, hello, I'm leaving the country now, bye. Yeah, and I was on a cruise ship 3 days later. Yeah.
Wow, how long were you doing that for?
I did it for 2 years, off and on. So I would do like a 6-month contract, have a little break, get some, land legs back, and then do it again. And each time it was different shows, different casts, different people, same cruise line. But yeah, so I did that for about 2 years, off and on. It was amazing.
How did it feel performing on the cruise ship?
You feel, to be honest, it's a bit weird, but you feel like a celebrity because the cast is like short, it's like 6 of us, and when you walk around and everyone's like, oh my God, you're amazing, oh my God, can I get a photo with you? And you're like, oh, I'm Justin Bieber, it's a bit weird. Yeah. And also the first time I was on a cruise ship, I was like, I'm gonna get lost on this boat, it's so massive. And then a week later, I'm like, get me off this boat, get me off this boat. I know everything on this boat. Yeah. And the thing is, when you're working with a cast that's so tight on a cruise ship, you can't leave each other. So you can't afford to have arguments either, so you learn to just get along. The most interesting thing I think for me on cruise ships was, because I'm an acrobat, of course, I have to do acrobatics on a cruise ship, don't I? So I have to do backflips. So there's something interesting when you're, on a cruise ship and it's going like this, and you do a backflip and the boat comes up to meet you, or the boat goes further away. So you learn how to adapt your technique style for acrobatics to accommodate. Yeah, but it was fun. It was great.
Yeah, that's good. I guess that also helped you improve your skills being in an uneven ground, I guess.
Yeah, got to lift a girl and hold her there, and the boat's moving, and you're like, I think I'm going to vomit. Or you've got to do backflips, all these turns, and then you've got to sing a song. It was big for me because it was my first really big thing that I'd done to make me project into the entertainment industry. This is what's going to happen. This is what my life has to be like. I have to be adaptable. Yeah,
and at 21, that's a pretty cool achievement. Traveling and just performing, doing what you love.
Yeah.
What was next after that?
After that, I did. I was fortunate enough to work with Baz Luhrmann. I did Midsummer Night's Dream with the Australian Opera Company. It was the first time he directed anything. It was straight after he did Strictly Ballroom, and I played Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream, which was a big thing for me. I'd never done major acting before, and I had to speak and act and dance and do all these different things. So that was a big thing for me. And working with someone of his caliber, and also Catherine Martin, who's the costume designer and does all his work, was just a phenomenal experience. And we had these amazing opera singers, both from Australia and from the UK, that performed in that. And we were fortunate enough with that to tour that to Scotland for the Edinburgh Festival. We were the very first time Australian opera company had been invited from the festival to go and perform. Wow. So that was huge for us and massive for me to go overseas and play this character that, for me who'd never really acted before, had that experience treading the boards in theatre now with Baz, and to go over to Scotland and perform this for the world. It was phenomenal. So that was my next big kind of thing where I was like, am I actually... There were moments on set and, I'm just like, am I really here? Am I doing this? Are you really Baz Luhrmann? It was just... But it was, once again, Opera Australia was just accommodating. It was like another family. Yes. And it was very exciting for me. Yeah. Very exciting.
What made you transition from dancing to acting?
Well, this is the thing. I think because I ended up doing multiple things, like performing, I just call it performing arts. So you do a range of different things.
Yeah.
As a performing artist, you take work when you can get it. It's one of those things. So there'd be a lot of times I go, I'm passionate about acting, I want to act, and I'd get all this dance work. I'm like, "Ugh, I don't want to dance, I want to act." But you're always chasing the next job. That's life as a performer. It's not stable. That's the reality of the industry. And I think that's why most parents will say to their kids, no, you need to be an accountant or something stable. So you are always chasing that job. So if it's a dance job, I'll do it. If it's an acting job, I'll do it. And I think because I got a taste of acting, I was like, I want to explore that. So I got into small theatre companies and did small roles, and then I got into extra work, so being an extra on a TV show, which is a great experience because I'd never been on a TV set before. So that was good, and then that led to me doing, what they call a 50-worder, which is just a couple of lines, and then a guest spot, and then I became a little character on that TV show for a little while. So that was another really big experience for me, just treading the boards in acting, because I'd never done anything like that before. So that helped me move on to the next chapter of my life, whatever that was going to be.
And I certainly agree that performing arts isn't very stable.
No.
Yeah, you always have to go after what's up there.
You do.
Yeah.
You've always got to be chasing the work, and you've always got to be prepared. Okay, am I going to do that? And sometimes there's jobs that you go, I don't want to do that, but I need to eat. So you do it, but that's the life of an artist. So
you also need to adapt from all the skills that you learned from a very young age and use it to whatever you could. Were your family always supportive? Because you did mention that not every single parent is supportive of their child doing performing arts as a living. How were your parents?
My mother was super supportive, more so than my father. But my mother was just like, you need to do what makes you happy. At the end of the day, happiness is the most important thing. You need to be happy doing what you're doing. And I think because my mum had done jobs where she wasn't very happy, so she didn't want me to be in a position to look back over my life and go, I'm secure, but I'm not happy. And so when I walked into that 21st birthday and said, I'm out of here, guys, there was a lot of shock, but my mum was like, good, you're following your dream. It's not going to be easy. And she always say to me, it's not going to be easy. But I had the support of her 100%. So when I would go on tour, I'd come back, I'd live with her rather than rent an apartment, because I was off on tour again. So it was like living out of a suitcase. So my mother in particular was extremely supportive, and my extended family were very supportive of what I did.
That's good. It's very good to know. What about, especially as a teacher, you probably would have encountered some students who have those kind of parents who are kind of like, you can't do, like, you can only do this as a hobby kind of thing. What would you think your message be to them?
It's really difficult because you can't tell a parent how to parent. You can't say you're doing the wrong thing by your child. And in their eyes they're not. They've got to think about what's best for their children. And I think it takes a strong individual as a child, I think, to say this is what I'm going to do, regardless. For me it was easy, as I said, because I wasn't overly academic. And so I didn't have another avenue to go down that I was interested in anyway. It would be different if I was interested in something else and I could pursue that, but I didn't have a different interest. I was performing arts. So for these parents, all I have to say to them is support your child. Support their dreams. It may work, it may not. But I think your job as a parent is to support what they want to do. That's all.
Did you end up experiencing any other hurdles with your support system at all, pursuing your dream?
Not really.
No?
No, I had the green light. I had the green light to be whoever I wanted to be as a person, kind of artist I wanted to be, 100% support.
That's allowed you to become everything, I guess. Doing, with all the experience you've had in over 20 years of experience in the industry, you've done so much.
I think having the support of my family and also friends that I've had since the beginning to always be supportive, even if they're not in the industry anymore, has allowed me to explore the next thing. What do I want to do next? What do I want to do? And I want to go down that road. I've never had anyone say, don't do that. I've had people say, be careful of that, or look at this. And I think as a business person as well, you've got to look at what has been successful. But I don't ever want to follow someone.
Yeah.
I always just want to do. You have, do my own thing, and I don't want to be a carbon copy of someone else.
Yeah.
I have to look at the industry, and I have to look at what works, and I have to look at success stories and failures. But without the failure, there's no success.
Yeah.
It's that simple. You have to fail, and you have to learn how to fail gracefully to have success. So I've failed many times. I've had multiple things that haven't worked, but they've been an amazing experience. So then I go, if I did it next time, I would do this different. So everything's a learning curve, always. I don't regret anything.
That's good. That's a good mindset.
No, I don't, because everything has brought me to here.
Yeah.
It's that simple. You know, if I hadn't done all those things, whether they're small or big shows or little projects, it wouldn't have all added up to what I can do today, and why I'm here, and what my presence is about, and what my purpose is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with looking at your experiences, is there anything at all that you would have changed? Even just one thing?
I would have saved more money. I would have been wiser when it comes to the bank account.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing really well-paying jobs and you're like, woo, let's go party, you've got nothing at the end of the week or the end of the show, that's not good. Yeah. That would be my main thing, and that is what I would suggest with other people, is don't get caught up in the environment. Think about your future and put some in the bank. Yeah.
With everything you've done, did you ever end up getting caught in that headspace? Or you're kind of just like, oh my God, I'm doing this for the rest of my life kind of thing?
I think where I started to get a little bit of a ego, I guess, or a bit of a big head, is when I was doing some TV work, and you're surrounded by, within that industry, and you're surrounded by other celebrities, I'm a celebrity, but you're surrounded by celebrities and all the attention they get, and you're in that sort of crowd. Or when I was, working with recording artists, and you're doing a lot of those sort of things, people want stuff from you and it feels good. So it is quite easy to get caught up in, oh, I'm something special.
Yeah.
I should be treated differently, I should be. Reality is you shouldn't. And I know that now. Yeah. And I don't treat anybody different. I don't really care whether you're the janitor or whether you run EMI Music or Channel 7. I don't really care. Everyone deserves the same amount of respect, in my opinion. But when you get caught up in that little scene, and there are people that demand that you treat them a certain way, and now I look at them and go, huh? If you stop making music now, where would you be? Yeah. Or, so it is quite easy when you are surrounded by people that are yes people. This is why celebrities run off the rails, is because they got a lot of money, they got everyone around them telling them they can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want, because you say, do this for me, and they say, no, you're fired.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is quite easy to get caught up in that world. Very, very, very easy. Yeah.
How are you able to discover yourself and kind of like center yourself back?
I think it's different for everyone. I mean, I know artists and celebrities that have never got into that at all. They've known who they are from the beginning, and they've never let that affect them. I think if you have levels of insecurity in yourself, and most artists do, but I think if you're not in control of those insecurities, it allows you to get sucked in. I think you've got to be really secure about who you are and be prepared to say no to things. And sometimes when you do say no in certain situations, it will have a negative effect on you. But be okay with that. Yeah. At the end of the day, be true to who you are as a person. Don't sell out, I guess. Don't become someone else for the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think insecurity also not only plays when you're up there, but it also comes when you're just about to start. Don't you think? For a lot of people.
Sure. Yeah, and even now, like I get nervous before I go on stage. Or if I have to go and do a singing lesson, I'm like, oh, please hit the note, otherwise this woman's going to laugh at me. Yeah. They're not going to laugh at me, you know what I mean? But we all have insecurities, and I don't know any artist that's 100% confident, which is why they are great artists, honestly, because they have some level of insecurity, or they have some level something they're working through. But I think knowing deep down who you are, and knowing that it's okay for fail. Yeah. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to hit a bum note. It's okay to forget the choreography. Not all the time, because then you won't get any work. Yeah. But we're all human. We all have the same things. It's going to happen. And I think we put too much pressure on ourselves. I know that was my flaw, I guess, is too much pressure, way too much pressure on myself to be perfect.
Yeah.
And I think because, not that I experienced perfection, but when I was a young gymnast and I was quite good, I always was trained 2 or 3 levels above what I competed.
Yeah.
So if I was competing a certain skill, my coach would always teach me well above that. So when I went into competition, that was easy to do. But one thing he did do that, looking back, I didn't like, was he'd get me to intimidate my other competitors by doing really impressive skills around them, to shake them. I didn't know that at the time. I was a kid. But looking back, that attitude, and I think that experience for me forced me to create perfection on myself. I must be better than everybody else in that situation. And when you go to an audition and you don't get it, you're like, but I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
And especially when you go to an audition and you know you're better than someone that got it,
Yeah.
you just have to accept it. You just have to go, someone is always, this is what I tell my students, or anyone I work with, anywhere, you are great, there's always someone better. Always someone better.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're less than, but we all have different skills. We're all at different points in our evolution. We're all at different points in our career. Doesn't mean you can't get somewhere. It just means you're not there yet. Work out what your strengths are, work out what your flaws are or your weaknesses that you need to work on, and focus on yourself. Don't focus on something else. Focus on you, because at the end of the day, the only person that can have a career is you.
Yeah.
No one else can make a career for you. You've got to do it. And when you're in it, it's hard work. Getting the career started is one thing. Keeping it going, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's tiring.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the thing. If you're not focused on yourself and you're focused on everyone around you, you lose sight of why you did this in the first place. You lose sight of your passion and your talent and why you're there. Yeah. And then what's the point of doing it? Just, you may as well work in a job you dislike then, you know, for 20 years and look back at your life and go,
yeah.
You know.
It's kind of like that saying that goes, it's always you against yourself.
True.
Nobody else.
Yeah, you are your worst critic. Yeah.
Do you think that helped you throughout everything that you've done? That pressure?
I think it's a 50-50 for me, because it's drived me to do better, push myself, but it also stopped me from doing things because I was scared of failing. Whereas now, I'm not scared of failure because I know what failure feels like. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
You know, so it did stop me from pursuing certain things earlier in my career that I wish I'd done to get me further down that road. And I was too embarrassed to do that, or too shy, or too worried that someone would judge me weirdly for that. Whereas now I don't worry about it. And I know as a professional, they're not doing that because I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not walking around going, oh, that kid, you know, because we're all learning. And that's, for me, what I try and do when I teach is create a safe learning space. It's okay to fall down. It's okay to make mistakes. So the pressure was a 50-50. It pushed me, but it did stop me from pursuing certain things.
Okay. Yeah. So as a teacher now, I'm guessing that that's also something you teach your students. Yeah. And you're also teaching a variety of things.
Yeah.
But what I want to know is, how did you get into runway modeling coach?
That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
After everything else, it's like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
It's a bridge bit far. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a bit weird. Like, I tell people my list of things that I do, and then runway coaches at the end, they're like, what?
How?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting. I was working for a modeling agency a long time ago, 100 years ago. But I was working for a modeling agency doing castings for them, so getting models in. Okay. And because of my choreographic background, I was actually choreographing fashion parades for them. And they were working with small independent labels, and they were doing lots of shows in nightclubs and different things, and they would run small competitions like Miss Summer and Miss this and Mr. that, you know, really, but they were really, really awesome. And I was getting involved in the choreographic side more so, and then I got really passionate about putting on these shows because that was my passion, and that's what I do. I create. I like taking nothing and then creating something amazing. So
it's a very satisfying experience.
it is. It is. And then I noticed that these models couldn't walk.
Oh no.
I was like looking at them, I'm like, okay, like you're going down the runway, but it don't look too good. And I was like, well, why is it not being taught? And the agency wasn't teaching it. They were just hiring the models or getting the models in on their books, and then they would do the shows for the agency. And so that's when I turned to the agency. I said, right, well, I think we need to run some classes for these models, and then we need to make it mandatory for those that want to do runway that they need to get into that. Because I thought about myself, I'm like, well, I'm a dancer. I can't get on stage never having a lesson. I'm never going to get a job either. So this is no different, and there is a skill to it. People just go, you're just walking. It's like, no. If you look at Fashion Week and you look at all those, they're not just walking. That's a very different skill set. People don't see it as anything serious, but it is a particular talent, and it is a skill, and it is something that requires work. So for me, at that time, I was like, you need to start introducing this. And as I started teaching it, I just was like, this is awesome. You know, I get to strut along with these girls, show them what it's meant to be like. I get to be a model for a day because I'm 5'5", so that's never going to happen unless I go to Asia. You know what I mean? So I'm never going to be, you know, in Fashion Week myself. So it's like living vicariously through these girls in one way as well. And I just enjoyed, because I enjoyed teaching and passing that information on, I just was like, this is awesome, I like doing this. And from then on I was like, okay, how do I do more of this? How do I get involved in it more? And is there a scope for it? Is there a place for it, you know? So, yeah.
It sounds like you kind of just like grabbed it and like, yep, I'm doing that now too.
Almost, yeah. I literally turned to the agency and said, you need to do this and I will do it. And I think because they didn't have to worry about it or think about it, and I'd been working with that agency for a while, they were like, yeah, okay, just do it. We trust me. Yeah, just do it. And I did it, and they got great results. And then those models actually could go for real castings and get the jobs. So that was good for the agency because it was making the agency more money and also a profile.
Well, not only them, but you're also able to help the models.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, because they were in this little world, in this little bubble, and until they learnt the skill to be able to experience something else, they couldn't go for an international casting. There's no way they would be able to walk down, you know, whether it be an Australian like Fashion Week or go for anything in Europe or anything like that. They didn't have the skill set, and not even just the skill set, but the understanding of the runway itself, the production element of the runway. There's certain rules, there's certain sides to walk on depending on what country you're in, what label you're working with. It's varied, so varied. Yeah, and I don't think people think that.
Teaching that is where you're at now.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's, for me, if you would ask me what's my next journey, right, that would be where my focus is. I mean, I've spent a long time doing performing arts, dance, acrobatics. I still love doing it, but I'm leaning a little out of that to, there's only so many children you can teach. That, for me, definitely it's something that I really want to focus on now. Because the industry is changing in so many different ways, and there's so many different opportunities. And as I said, I don't think you need to look for the opportunity, you need to create them. So yeah, that's definitely where I want to go.
That's so good.
You're living
a very colorful life, and I'm here for it.
I'm definitely not someone to sit behind a desk for 25 years writing on it. No, not gonna happen.
It's definitely like a person that you could just sit for hours and just hear all these stories. Like infinite amount of stories.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
With Quintin's journey, I think we can learn that you can't only just stick to one thing. You can always explore everything, whatever it may be, no matter what age you are or where you are at the moment. Just, if you have the passion and desire to go for it, just do it. There's nothing that can stop you. It's all in your hands, and you just need the courage and the confidence to do it. Sometimes you need a good support system, but the most important thing is that you trust yourself. And that is it for this episode. We'll see you guys in the next one. On the previous episode, we initially met with Quintin James and talked about his childhood and discovered that with over 20 years of industry experience, he's gone through a lot, from being a competitive gymnast to dancer, acting, dancing on a cruise ship, and touring around the world. Now he's doing teaching for various categories, but what I want to learn more about is his modeling coach as a runway model coach. So welcome back to Behind the Lens. is Quintin James.
Thank you.
So now you're doing runway model coach. What do you hope to teach everybody that comes into your workshops?
How to walk. I think the biggest thing in any of the workshops or things that I teach is confidence. I think confidence plays a massive part in whatever you're doing. So what I see with whether they're children right through to adults doing runway, it's lack of confidence. And I think my job is to try and encourage that person with my skill, how to be confident in that space. So obviously there's a technique to runway walking, depending on your age, depending on what you're modeling, what garment, all those sort of things. But for me, it's building that internal confidence in that person and giving them a good skill set so that when they walk down a runway or when they are watching themselves walking, they're like, yeah, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I feel like a model, or I feel confident.
They feel good about themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why do you feel like it has to start from within?
I think because there's so much external elements to performing arts and also runway. There's, you know, the label. If you're doing a pro job, it's the label, it's the choreographer, it's the director, it's the media, it's whatever. If you're doing a pageant, it's the judges, it's the competition, it's the organizer, it's going to the music. And every time you do a different show or a different competition, the stage is different. You got to adapt. So I think if you're confident in your skill, you know what you can do and you do it well, you are adaptable to no matter what the situation. Yeah.
And so confidence, you'd say, is probably the biggest factor into being successful, because you have to be strong inside to withstand all that external, as you said, environment.
Absolutely.
Because it can get pretty harsh.
Oh, absolutely. It's knowing who you are. Knowing what you offer and knowing how to do what you do well, for sure.
What do you say to do you ever have students that kind of like come to you for advice when they do experience that kind of setback, that external setback?
Yeah, I do. And I think this is the interesting thing I find as a teacher is you can never teach, well, you can't teach people the same way. Everybody's different. So when they walk into the room, whether it's a private lesson or workshop, I have to work out, how does this person like to learn? What's their personality? What's their experience? What do they like to do? How do they work? How do they walk? How do they work? How does their mind work? So teaching is just as much about psychology as it is about passing on a skill set. So it's really important for me to get to know the person. So one-on-one I love because I get time to understand how that person thinks. And that then opens the door for me to use certain things to help them understand why they do what they do. And then train them over time to use that as an advantage or block that out and replace it with something else.
Does it ever get easy? Well, you've been teaching since you said you were 15.
Yeah, 15. Yes and no. Like, I don't get nervous about teaching anymore, and I can do it quite comfortably. But I put a lot of pressure on myself in some ways as a teacher, because I want my student to walk out better than when they walked in. That's my primary goal. Sometimes that's hard because that doesn't always happen. And sometimes I feel myself giving that student too much information because I want them to walk out going, whoa, okay, I can do this now. And as I said, everyone's different, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But I still love teaching. I can't imagine myself doing anything else.
And with kind of like teaching, what's kind of like the age that your students are at? Are they kind of like variety, or do you teach like a specific?
I'm particular. I don't like to teach anyone preferably under 8, 9, 10, if I can. Just because I focus more on runway rather than pageant walking. So I think when you're starting to walk on runway, there has to be a certain level of maturity within your mind and also your body for that to happen. And I think ethically within the industry as well. So because my passion is more runway, that strut, that feel, that sort of thing, I prefer to work with sort of that age group and up. So
you also work with adults?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you also mentioned pageantry.
Yeah.
You also teach pageant contestants.
Yeah. I teach them the runway side of pageantry.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm a pageant coach. I'm more of a runway coach, and I've judged beauty pageants, which what got me into more of the runway side of things. And I focus on the walking, the runway. When it comes to some of my students will have a pageant coach and me.
Okay.
And that's why I also don't like to teach really young kids, because in the pageants, they have a particular way they're meant to move and the way that they're taught to interact with the judges, interact with the staging, things like that. And I don't want to confuse them. And it is quite difficult to get mixed messages from different coaches. So because I focus on the runway side of things, the age for me is very particular. And I'll work with coordinators of pageants and things like that. So I focus on getting them from one stage, from that pageant stage, to that runway feel. Yeah.
And then, so when you're working with like 8 to 9, do you find that they also still get confused between like the two different industries?
Yeah, very, very
How do
confused.
you work with that?
It's difficult because if they're doing lots of competitions, it goes against everything I'm trying to tell them to do. So I'm actually one of those coaches that will say, you need to stop seeing me now and just focus on your pageant coach, or do your pageantry stuff until you're ready for me, because it is very, very confusing. And when you're on stage for that 1 minute or 90 seconds or whatever it is that you have to strut and show your thing in a pageant, you can't afford to be confused. And I think for those littler kids, they have a certain way in which they're meant to interact, and I think it's important that they focus just on that. Yeah.
And I guess I think just for the benefit of our viewers, what are the differences between pageant and runway?
Okay, so I'll start with runway. Runway, if you think, I always talk about runway when I'm talking to a client, it's about not so much you, it's about your garment. So even if they're wearing their own clothes in a competition, I always think of it as you are working for a designer. So runway, to me, I go straight onto the runway like as a professional model. That's what I try and get in my students' heads or my clients' heads straight away. So you might be wearing your own garment, but I want you to think like this is a label. Your job is to sell that garment as part of a range for people to buy. It's actually not so much about you. It's about the garment. So we need to get you to show off the garment the best way. And that's by teaching you how to walk in a certain way to get you to present that on the runway, so people go, I love that jacket, I love that skirt, I love that hat, whatever it is, I want to go to that label's website and buy it. Pageantry is more about the individual person. And the way that they walk is very focused on the judges. So the judges will sit at the front of the table, and as a pageant entrant, your job is to make eye contact with those judges 24/7. Like you don't take your eyes off them, right? And it's to impress the judge. Whereas for me, when you're looking at runway, even if there are judges, I tell my clients, don't focus on the judges. Your job is to focus on the audience, because your job is to sell the garment. So there is a massive difference, in the way your headspace is when you're doing a pageant to when you're doing runway, and the way you interact with the audience, the way you interact with the judges, the way you move physically it's completely different. Very, very different. That's why it can get so confusing. And even as teenagers, sometimes it can get very confusing. So some pageants focus more on the runway when they hit a certain age and less out of the pageantry. And that's kind of where I would step in.
So when they're like, do you also teach like 8 to 9 years old? Let's say they're not interested in pageantry, they just want to do runway. You're happy to help them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because the skill set is, they can use that further down the line. And just generally confidence. This is the interesting thing. It's, as I was talking about confidence before, it's just knowing how to walk. Like, this is what I say to most people. Walk into a room, you want people to look at you. If you are sort of sitting in the corner, or when you walk in no one pays attention to you, that's not that great. So it's all about the confidence. So when you're on the runway, you've got literally 3 seconds by the time you enter that you want people to look at you. So what you learn with me in that hour or that session or whatever, I hope you can use that daily. So whether you're going into a classroom, or you're going into an exam, or you're going into a debate, or you're going into a job interview, whatever that is, or you're going on a date, whatever that is, if you're older, hopefully, you know, it's about confidence, about presenting yourself in that moment. So for 8, 9-year-olds, it's the same. It's building that confidence so when you walk, you're not like this. You present yourself, you're in that moment. You want people to pay attention to you. Yeah. So it's similar to how I would teach an adult, a little less hip, a little less this, but the presence is still the same. Yeah.
Confidence, I guess, as you said, it goes with anything. So then anybody who goes into your workshop, they don't always have to go for professional modeling, I guess. It's also a way of gaining confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
In whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of people that would come to a workshop not necessarily thinking whether they want to be a runway model. And the reality is they're not all going to be a runway model. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. It's like the performing arts, like 0.1% become full-time employed in the performing arts. So you might want something, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. But for me, how do you generate a skill set, like I have, to allow you to do a myriad of different things that will give you happiness and success? Yeah. So yeah, you may not necessarily be a runway model, but you may end up coaching, or you may have a fashion label, or you might do anything, who knows? But using that skill and that confidence allows you then to go into whatever avenue you want to go. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With that being said, do you ever go to a student up front and feel like this doesn't look like it's got stable for you in the future? Do you ever do that?
It's a good question. And in my head, yes. But I would never walk up to a student and say, take up another career. Mm. Simply because it's so easy to crush someone's dreams. And then you'd be surprised. I mean, I look back at things that people have said to me, positive and negative, in my childhood, and I think that didn't have an impact. But if I'm 45 years old and I still think about that and how I felt in that moment when that person said that thing to me, it did have an impact. So as a teacher, or as a mentor, or as a person, I think a certain level of honesty has to be there. But you have to put it in a way that is going to be beneficial for that person. I never want to say, you know, I still want them to get confidence. And I think for me, go into that industry, work it out for yourself. Mm-hmm. Some realities are some realities, that's how it is. But I think as they start to progress further down the line and closer to that, they start to realize maybe it's not what they thought it was going to be, or it's not as easy, or it's not for them. Mm-hmm. And it's best that they work that out themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
that's okay, as like you said before, with everything that you've experienced, sometimes it is better when you do it yourself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And having the people around you then to go, okay, well, that didn't work out. How do we help navigate you into what you want to do next? Mm-hmm. I mean, I know a lot of people, and I have this from parents, say to me all the time with dancers, my child's never going to be a dancer. Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't matter. They've learnt posture, they've learnt poise, discipline, skill set. They may decide they've had a corporate career for 20 years, hate it, and want to open a dance studio. You don't know what's going to come back to you. You know, so if you're teaching something the right way and you're imparting that level of confidence and security, later down the track, that person may use that. Mm-hmm. And that's a benefit to them at some point.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, as a coach, not just as a runway model coach, you're just kind of there as a guidance or support, but not there to literally give them a silver spoon and be like, you're going to be a professional model.
I never say that, ever. Yeah. Because I can't guarantee that. Mm-hmm. The industry is so difficult. It's so hard. The success rate is so small that I would never turn to someone and say, you are definitely going to do this. I will look at kids or people that I coach and go, you need to focus on this. Mm-hmm. Like, you should really do photographic. Mm-hmm. You should go and do this, or you should focus on this. But whether they succeed, I don't know. It's also up to them. Yeah. If you've got the drive and the passion to take the knockbacks and not let it affect you, you'll be successful.
Yeah. So it also depends on their passion and how determined they are.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I teach kids now and they have no drive at all, but they keep coming back to class. I'm like, why are you here? Why are you here? You know, you're making my life hell. Why did you come? You're not. But they don't have the drive to succeed. Their parents have the drive for them to succeed, but they don't have the drive. So for me, as a young gymnast or dancer, I would go to class, come home and stretch, do the choreography so I knew it the next day in class. I wanted to impress my teachers and I wanted to be the best. Not once did my parents ever say to me, you need to practice. What they would say is, you need to study. And I'd go, I'm too busy practicing, So it's worked out okay for me. But it comes internally. Everything has to be internal. You've got to have the drive to push yourself the next level, not expect someone to do it for you. You've got to be the one asking your parent, Mum, Dad, can I do this competition? Can I do this class? Can I do this? Can I go see that person? You have to be the driving force, not the parents.
Yeah. And what is it like when you have that kind of student?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's because, to be honest, it's rare.
Really?
Honestly, it doesn't come around that often. You would think it would be the opposite, but it's not. When you have a student that is a sponge and is hungry and is asking lots of questions and is passionate and wants to do the next thing, to me, I have an Oprah moment. The light bulb goes on, I'm like, you all get a car, yay! Because it's great for me, because I'm like, yes, I can work with you. And then I go, no matter what you decide to do, I think you're going to do well. Yeah.
That's so surprising, because usually just kind of like listening around with like friend groups and stuff, they kind of like think, wow, modeling is kind of like is what a lot of people want to do. Why do you think it's so rare? Do you think is it like they just lose interest, or they don't want to go through the process?
I think they don't understand the reality of the industry. It's nice to say I want to be a model, it's easy. I'm going to stand in front of a camera and get paid thousands of dollars. I'm going to walk down the runway and get $10,000. No. It's actually really difficult.
Yeah.
It's tiring, traveling, it's hard work, dieting, working out. Your life is that one thing. And I think people have the glamour side of modeling. I just want to be on a magazine, I just want to do this, I want to get paid lots of money. No. When they start to realize it's actually hard, there's a lot of competition, and the requirements and restrictions on it are very tight, they kind of go, it's too much work. Yeah.
Do you also teach that side do you show that side of the industry to your students?
I'm 100% transparent, yes, because I think it's important. It's very important that they understand what they're getting into, because not a lot of people talk about it. Because you have agents, you have casting people, you have different people telling you you're going to be a star, you're going to do this or whatever else, and it's not the reality. The reality is it's hard work. The reality is the photo shoots, the free work that you may need to do just to get a portfolio if you can't afford one. The people that will try and take advantage of you financially, emotionally, all these different things, the things that you need to do to succeed. Yeah, it's super rewarding, but no one talks about it.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, very, very. And I just go, well, that's not fair, because I was taught by those professionals when I was dancing the reality of the industry. I was like, yeah, I'm going to tour, I'm going to dance with recording artists, I'm going to be amazing. And the reality is, yeah, I did do that, but I also had times where, I had no money, or I had no work and I had to struggle. So it's not an easy life.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is that needs to be talked about. The industry itself, the reality of the industry, as well as the exciting part and the glamorous side, there is a dirty side. Like a flip coin, there's always the other side. And I think that needs to be discussed, and I do discuss it in all my workshops.
That's good, that's very good to educate students.
Yeah.
But aside from the students, you've definitely got like these 8 and 9 years old, or like a little more mature, like the teenagers or young adults. What about the parents? Do you also speak to them about it? Because they also support their they have to support their children financially, but also like the emotional support. Do you ever speak to them about these things?
I encourage parents to have open dialogue, but I don't like parents sitting in on a lesson. Generally, if I teach a private lesson, I will get a parent to come in towards the end and show them what we did and explain what needs to happen next. They need to practice this, so that we're all on the same page. Because so many times a student will leave, whether it's particularly a child, will go and they'll say, oh, I don't need to do anything. And they come to the next lesson. I'm like, did you do X? Whoa, I didn't know. So for me, being all on the same page is super important. So I invite the parent in. I invite the parent to ask any questions that they want. It's important that we're all on the same page, because to me it's a team. I'm not just this one person that's going to create something. We all have to be together, because if that student needs to practice or they need to do X, Y, and Z, I need the parents' support that they're going to allow them to do that or encourage them to do that. And I do it for myself, because the next week or the next time I have that client, if something hasn't been done or if they haven't improved, the parent knows why. You know what I mean? It's basically, well, you had all this stuff to do and you didn't do it. So open dialogue is super important for me. Yeah.
And it's also very important to get that support from the parents, not just from you.
Yeah.
Because they might only see you like once a week or maybe once a fortnight or something like that.
Yeah.
They also need that kind of reminder, because it's that repetition that gets you to be successful in what you actually want to do and achieve your idea.
Yeah.
I think what I want to touch up on is when you're training a pageant and or a runway student, is the mindset different as well?
Yeah.
In what way?
Okay. So yes and no. So if I'm teaching someone runway, it's easy for me because I focus on just one thing, which is present yourself, present the garment, this is the technique, this is your goal. Your goal is not to impress a judge, your goal is just to be present and represent a label, whether it's your own or whatever it is. Pageant, it is a different mindset because the audience doesn't matter in a pageant. It's all about those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 judges sitting there. You ignore the audience. So the way I teach has to be very, very different, because if a pageant kid focuses on the audience, they lose the judge contact, therefore they don't place.
Yeah.
That's my fault. If a runway person focuses too much on judges and not the audience, then they're not doing their right thing. So it is very, very different. Yeah.
Do you still think confidence plays equally important for both of them?
Yeah. And the thing is, as I said before, I was shy as a kid. So sometimes confidence doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
So what helped me was acting, because I learned how to be a character.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I was on stage, I wasn't myself, I wasn't Quintin, because I was shy or nervous or anxious or whatever. So I would put on a character, So that's what I teach these guys as well. Sometimes you don't want to do that, or you don't feel confident or comfortable. You have to pretend you are. And if you are a runway model and you're a professional runway model, they don't care how you feel. They want you to do a really good job because you're getting paid good money. So effectively, this is not very nice, but it's what I tell them: if you runway, you are a walking coat hanger. Because it's about the label.
Yeah.
It's not about you. You become famous and celebrity and whatever else because of the labels that you work for and the success that you have. But you only get that by doing such a fantastic job that all these other labels want you, and then there's campaigns and things like that. So confidence is important, but sometimes you don't feel confident.
Yeah.
You have to pretend. No one's going to pay you $10,000 to walk down the runway like this.
Yeah.
So you have to put on a character. And I think having that in the bank, in your back pocket, if you need it, is helpful. Yeah.
Just having that mask on when you need it. Because you're not always going to have a good day.
No.
There will be some days where you do need that mask. Yeah. And
Yep.
I guess something as well, just going back to what you said, that they don't really care about you, that you're a walking coat hanger. There's obviously been kind of like a trend kind of like circulating. People are just talking more about the health of the models. What's your opinion on that? Kind of like models just making themselves hungry just so that they can be that skinny to fit in the garment and get the job.
It's a hard situation because I don't agree with it at all. And I think everyone deserves a representation. And this has been the biggest thing. We look at runway and the general population, like 90% of the population cannot fit in anything that those models wear.
Up on stage?
No, they just don't exist. And sample sizes in the US and in Europe don't actually exist. They're sample sizes. So they're not an actual size that you can buy.
Yeah.
So that's ridiculous. That's not normal. And that's the point is, okay, you have a career, so it comes down to, do you want the job? And we are stuck because the industry dictates what you need to do. So if the industry is saying you need to be a certain size, and you go, no, I don't, then that's fine, go for it, but you're not going to get as much work. Are you okay with that? It comes back down to confidence and owning yourself and owning your future and your presence. So I won't bow down to that. I will do it my way because I don't see that as healthy or I don't see that as good. And I think that's the interesting factor is we've had a big resurgence in that with the mental health issues, the physical health issues, that those sample sizes don't exist anymore. You know, it is changing. And I think but for a very, 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 very long time, it was that way. And as a model, you have to either do it or just get out of it.
Yeah, no money in it. You're not.
Well, that's just the reality. This is what it comes down to with the reality of the industry. If you're getting into an industry, you have to understand what's required of you in the industry. So yeah, you can have talent or you can do all these things, but if you're not prepared to do those extra things that the industry requires you to do, are you in the right industry? That's what it comes down to. And unfortunately, the industry dictates.
Yeah.
It's the same as the acting. It just dictates what it wants. And as a client in that, or someone that wants to work in that, you have to sometimes conform to that to get the job. And I think it just tipped too far, where we were seeing these skeletons walking down the runway, and someone's like, seriously, McDonald's should just sponsor this, feed these people a burger. And girls who are just physically sick and mentally sick. But then you have the flip side, and no one talks about male modeling, where they're living in a gym, they're taking diuretics, they're taking mood stabilizers, they're taking all sorts of different things to stay extremely low body fat percentage. You know, so it's across the board. And I think it's extremely unhealthy. Is it going to completely change? No, I don't think so. Is it changing? Yes. How quickly that changes, I don't really know.
Is it changing for both male and female models?
It's changing more for females than males.
Really?
Yeah. I think because we've got the Me Too movement, we've got all these different movements for women, empowering women, which is fantastic because it's well overdue. And we're now seeing models of different shapes on the runway, different hair colors. We've got all sorts of different things coming out, and I think it's super important because, as I said, 95% of the population don't look like that. And we're seeing that in media as well. We're seeing all sorts of different things. I don't think we're seeing that with men. We still expect men to be 6'1", 6'2", 6 whatever, built, ripped, six-pack, 8% body fat.
Do you think they also need their own kind of movement to kind of start a change?
Well, yes and no, because I think if you're working out a lot, you're pretty fit. And I don't know that many guys that don't want to look good. The issue is when you have to maintain a certain body fat percentage, which is really difficult. It's like, well, I'll eat chicken breast and broccoli leaf, you know. But that's the same with bodybuilding. It's the same with a whole range of different industry competition type things. You have to do that if you want to be in that competition or you want to succeed. It comes down to the industry. That's what the industry wants. Do it. If you don't like it, hop out. Yeah.
And with conversation's just gone a whole flip.
Sorry.
On the side of the whole
Sorry.
industry. No, it's okay. We need to talk more about it. People need to realize these things, and that's what Behind the Lens is about, uncovering this kind of thing. Does it, when you're up there on the catwalk, is there anybody, like, any time where a model is not getting the pay that they need and they're not able to sustain themselves? Because I have watched and read a few things before I actually decided I wanted to do a bit of modeling. There were a lot of people struggling to even to have a sustainable life. Is that a regular occurrence in the industry? And do you ever have any students that have gone through that?
Yeah, like, it's hard. It's the same as performing arts. You've got to chase the work, and it's not consistent. Modeling is not consistent unless you're like the top 5%. That's it. And with the decline of media, like magazine, we don't have print media anymore. Like, we had all these magazines, you know, that would allow new up-and-coming models opportunities to strut their stuff and be photographed and whatever else. And we used to have a lot of small independent labels doing fashion shows, left, right and center. We don't have it anymore. in Australia, particularly Sydney, we don't have small labels putting on shows. We don't have magazines doing that. So it's difficult for up and coming models to learn. As I said, as an artist for myself, I learned on the road. Like I went to class and I did drama, but you learn when you're there and working with professionals. We don't have a lot of that here in Australia, unfortunately. So the workload is very small. And unless you're prepared to be diversify and be quite experimental and try different things, and if you're just going to focus on one thing, it's going to be difficult to make money unless you become that top 5%. And there's only so many agencies in Australia, and there's only so many agencies in Sydney that will take people, and their windows are only open for a short amount of time, and their requirements are very strict because they want to sell their product, i.e. the model, overseas, because there's more money overseas than there is here. So once again, the industry dictates. So it is difficult to sustain an ongoing career if you're focusing, I just want to do runway. There's no work here. There's just none. We have Australian Fashion Week, Mercedes Fashion Week. We have, you know, the occasional Grace Brother, Maya kind of fashion parade. We don't have anything going. When I was in the modelling industry back in the 90s, there were shows every weekend. There was, so many different things. Like I worked with so many small labels that were quite happy to use models for experience and or pay them a small amount of money, like an appearance fee, to model their stuff. And we would do shows in clubs and shopping centres, and also there's none of that anymore. Tell me the last time you would go to a venue and see a fashion parade. You don't.
The only one I know is the Mercedes.
That's right. We used to do fashion parades in nightclubs before the club opened at 10.
Really?
So we would, you know, have a massive show and a competition or whatever else, or a label, drinks, canapes, and then the nightclub would open at 10 o'clock. And it would be packed. Because people wanted things to do, and it was great for the industry because it was great for these models to, you know, learn how to do a good job professionally. You know, work with different labels, work with designers, work with me, of course. But not just me, but there were a lot of different companies and production companies doing that. It's difficult because we don't have it now. So I think that's the downside to the industry at the moment.
It's tougher to start a career now in the modelling industry? What would you
yes, sorry to interrupt, but yes and no.
Okay.
I think yes, because there isn't so much opportunity, but no, because there is that resurgence of you don't need to be a skeleton or you don't need to be a certain height. We've dropped a lot of height requirements, we've dropped certain things. So in that way, yes, because we are looking more multicultural, we are looking for different faces, different bodies to represent a brand. And most brands are moving out of what they used to have, which was only a size this, you know, this to 6 or whatever it is, because that's not their market. They're not making money. So in that sense, yeah, it's easier because we're seeing more people, but it's harder because we don't have the same opportunities as we used to have to tread the boards and try different things and experience. We
were talking about the industry and how unfair it is and how it gets very tough. What is your advice to the aspiring models now to start a career? What's your advice on how to take that first step?
The first thing I would say is, it comes back to knowing who you are and educate yourself. I'm all about education. Like, know what you're getting involved in. That's why I teach the way I teach. If you don't know what you're stepping into, you're going into it blind. So educate yourself, whether that's by people like me that can give you the information or read online or whatever. Educate yourself. Understand who you are, because you're going to get a lot of people telling you you're not good enough. You're too tall, your eyes are weird, you're a weird shape, your hair's, I don't like this, your nose is funny, your ears, just everything, right? They're going to pull everything apart. And it can get to you because you start to think about yourself going, I'm not worthy of anything.
I'm not perfect enough kind of thing.
But that trickles into the rest of your life. You know, I'm not worthy, I'm not attractive enough to find a partner or have friends, and we have a massive high issue with depression and anxiety as it is. So know who you are, educate yourself on the industry you want to get involved in, and be prepared to try different things. Don't just limit yourself, have tunnel vision and limit yourself to one thing, because if I had done that for myself, I wouldn't have the career I've had. The only way I've been able to do what I've done and make money and do the things is because I'm versatile. I can do multiple things. And it's great if you want to excel at one thing and just be an elitist, like a ballet dancer or this or just that, totally fine. But then also know on the flip side to that, your work may not be the same. Mm-hmm. So educate yourself on the industry you want to get involved in, and know the pros and the cons of it, and be prepared for those, and learn who you are as a person. And you can't say to an 8-year-old, you need to know who you are. I mean, it's an evolution. And you only learn those things through life experiences, you know, through success and failures. And I mean, I'm 45 and I know who I am now, but if you would have asked me 15 years ago, who are you? I would have given you some cocky answer that was not true. So it all comes with evolution, but be prepared to change and change with the industry. And if you don't agree with something, don't do it.
So as a teacher, knowing everything that the industry is, how do you cram everything in to your lessons?
You've got to be selective with the information you give when. And also it depends on the student. So I can give you a bunch of information in an hour, your head will explode. And you walk out more confused as when you walked in. So it comes down to, like I was talking about, your personal evolution. The way you go through a skill or learn a skill, let's say runway modeling, that has an evolution as well. So I think giving the right piece of information or the right amount of information, depending on what stage you're at, is important. So I try not to give too much because I don't want to scare people. At the same time as I don't want to encourage them to just, you know, this is easy for you or whatever. It's also getting to know the person, knowing what they can handle information-wise. So it's all got to do with stages, their development stage, where they're at emotionally, spiritually, and where they're at in their career. It's important to give them that at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And now that you've been doing runway modeling coach for how long?
Well, the first I did was probably about 15 years ago.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, so off and on for about 15 years. Yeah.
And your upcoming project now is going to be with the Runway Academy.
How exciting! How exciting is that? I'm pumped.
It's going to be very soon.
Yes.
What do you hope to achieve in particular, maybe at this point in time? Do you still have the same vision when you're teaching students, or does it ever shift?
Okay, this is a very good question. And because I am excited about this project, particularly because we talk about Me Too, we talk about different revolutions and changes. And I impart some of that in my lessons, but in my experience, I've not been involved with a company yet that shares the same vision as me or same ethos as me, that wants to give all that information, the good, the bad, the ugly, and help those people within that navigate where they want to go and support that. So for me to get involved in a company that is transparent like that, that wants to support the up and coming talent with reality as well as confidence and help and nurture and tuition and all that stuff, is super exciting for me, because there aren't, agencies don't do it. There are other companies that they offer runway, yeah, sure, or coaching, but they don't do that. So to be involved and help develop a program that is the next phase, I actually just see it as another revolution. It's the next phase of runway and coaching and development in this country. I'm like so excited because I think a certain way now to be involved with a company that goes, wow, we've been thinking that, but no one wants to share that information because it's a bit, I'm like, well, that's what we need to talk about. We need to talk about that, and we need to talk about this. There's two sides, and we need to discuss it all, and we need to lay it out on the table. So for me, it's not just about how to walk. It's about contracts, it's about not getting ripped off, it's about all sorts of things, plus the confidence and the labels and photographic. It's a range of different things. So to be involved now with a company that wants to explore all those and develop those, and not just run a workshop and see you later, bye. It's not about that. It's about developing a program and an ongoing program and a mentorship, so these people can get involved and not just walk away out of 8 weeks and go, yeah, whatever, see you later, good luck, we got your money. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's literally about, okay, we are now here for you. we are a family, we are going to do this and we're mentoring you and we're going to help you. We can't do it for you, but we can give you the information for you to then feel confident and comfortable to go out and go, right, I'm going to explore this. And then come back and say, what do I do next? How do I do this? And then, you know, different types of workshops and seminars and talks, and I'm just pumped, I'm excited. Yeah, really excited about it, because I've been wanting to do this for ages. And it's just, nothing's been an opportunity for me to do it. And now I'm like, okay, it's exciting.
We're very excited to have you on board.
I'm so pumped, actually. I'm so excited,
It's so good to have somebody who has the same vision,
Yeah.
especially because as a student, you can't just learn about one thing, there's a lot of things you have to know about.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah.
It makes you a very good teacher.
Well, thank you, thank you. I try, but yeah.
So the modeling industry, it has a lot of its ups and downs, and just kind of like, this is what Behind the Lens is all about. We want to show you the good side and the bad side, because it's not just about the little glitz and glam that you see on Instagram or Facebook. There's a lot of hard work that goes behind it, and there are a lot of sacrifices that also go behind it. And students need to be educated about this. And I'm very glad to have been able to sit here or even get the chance to meet Quintin James, because he shares the same vision, not just for his students now, but to kind of start a revolution, not for Australia, but hopefully the whole world. I'll see you guys in the next episode. On our previous episodes, we talked about his childhood, how he became interested in performing arts, and how he changed from one career to another, and also how he teaches each student differently, what he finds is important as a coach, not just a runway model coach, but just as a coach in general, and how important confidence is in anything that you do in life, whether that be modeling, acting, dancing, whatever it is you do. How you present yourself to everyone around you is always going to be important. In this episode, we want to talk more about the future and what the modeling industry is like for everybody. So welcoming back to Behind the Lens is Quintin James.
Good to be back.
So we talked about how the fashion industry has changed over the few years.
Yeah.
What do you think the future is going to be? Maybe let's narrow it down to maybe 5 years?
I think it will continue to evolve. I think we're in a real resurgence at the moment where there's a lot of traction. So I think it will continue to evolve. I don't think we're going to see massive changes. In everything, it takes time, because you have to think about where the industry has been for the last 100 years, and it hasn't changed for such a long time. And now we're demanding something different. So don't expect massive changes overnight. It will slowly change, I think, and as some people that make those decisions of how it has been sort of dwindle out of the industry and the new people come through, we'll see more change. But you know, it'll take time, but it's a positive thing for sure. Yeah.
That's good. What kind of changes are you hoping to see?
I'm hoping to see some fairness. Like I was saying before, the reality of an industry is the reality. It is what it is. But I think we are seeing more diversity on the runway and in photographic. I would like to see the health benefits of those artists, because I consider models as artists. They're creative artists as well. The mental health and physical health of those people as well. We don't talk about that a lot. We don't talk about that with dancers or actors and things like that. I mean, look at the suicide of Robin Williams. Things like that. We didn't expect any of that. And that's the interesting thing with mental illness, and it all comes from different avenues. So I think whether it's physical or mental or spiritual, we need to nurture people in the industry. We need to support each other. And I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that support and a less of that cutthroat, you know, I'll do anything to get ahead situation. I think that side of things is starting to be frowned upon, which is excellent, because we can now focus on support. Great that you got that job. Great you did this, you know, and help each other be better at what we want to do and move forward.
Yeah. And as a coach, or even myself as a presenter, how do you think we should keep this trend of like changing and challenging those negative side of the industry, turning it into something positive. How do you think we should keep the kids educated about it?
Talk, communicate. Don't let the conversation die. The reason why revolutions happen and the movements happen is because it gets traction. People keep talking about it, whether it's through social media, whether it's programs like this, whether it's print, whether it's blogs, education programs, whether it be through schools or workshops. Communication and allowing people to interject their thoughts, whether I don't mind how old you are. Everyone has an idea. So when I teach, I ask my students lots of questions. What do you think about this? How does that feel? Da, 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 da. Because I can't dictate what you do. I can tell you the skills that you require, but if something doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. I need to work out as a coach, how do I make it work? So dialogue with my students is really important. And I think in these sort of situations, it's the same. We can't stop talking about it, and we've got to start exposing certain things in a certain way so people are educated by it. You know, not everything is negative. Everything is, everything has 50-50, but we need to talk about both sides consistently if there's going to be that movement, I guess, or that change. Because when change stops, it's when the dialogue stops. And it usually stops because we feel pressure to stop talking. And I think, don't feel that pressure. Just keep talking about it. Yeah.
Do you think with all these changes and kind of social media gives everybody like this freedom of speech kind of thing, and that's where kind of the Me Too movement came from? Do you think the industry will continue stopping that or trying to stop it from happening?
I think social media plays a positive and a negative part in the modelling industry, the fitness industry, the dance industry, whatever industry. We see perfection on Instagram, we see this, we see that. And so many people strive for that. We see addiction to social media. And we see people posting because something hasn't happened to their Instagram account and they're like, oh my God, my world's over. Like, come on, let's be realistic. It's easy for me because I grew up without social media, so I can see both sides. But I think social media is a great platform for you to explore and play, but it's also easy for people to sit behind a keyboard or behind their phone and write a negative comment, and it goes out to millions of people. And I think that's not a good thing. And how do you stop it? I don't think you can stop it. It comes down to you either not reading your negative comments or not letting it affect you, being true to who you are and what you want to do. So I think when it comes to movements, there's always going to be someone wanting to try and shut you up. Stop it. I don't want it to get any bigger because someone else will be exposed or something else will be exposed. It's not always about one thing. It's like we're going down a road and then we don't want to stop this conversation. Oh, we found out this, oh, we found out that. So we keep going down different roads and exposing different people or different parts of the industry. So people that run an industry don't want this information out. It's that simple. So there's always going to be someone or some group that is going to want to squash it.
Yeah.
It's just, that's life. And I think, let them try. Let them try. I think it comes down to speaking truth though. There is a lot of false accusations and there are a lot of false imagery and different things on social media. So it's sifting between what is not real, like the false, and what is true. And I think if you're speaking your truth, you're okay.
Then how do you figure out what's real and what isn't?
That's a very good question. I don't know, because we are bombarded with images and dialogue you don't know. And I think if you're going to go down a particular road and get involved in a certain conversation, you need to educate yourself before you speak. You just can't start mouthing off about a particular person or an industry if you have no real reference point to that. If you've only heard it third hand from someone, oh yeah, that person did this or that industry is like that, then I don't think you have a place to get involved in that particular conversation. Educate yourself first and talk from experience. And if people aren't prepared to talk from experience, then maybe be their voice for them. But don't just blurt anything out, because then we don't know what's true and false. So it's a matter of being true, but also getting involved in what you feel you have a place to say in. Don't get involved in all the other garbage that's out there. Yeah.
With the trend of kind of diversity and increasing inclusion in the industry, there is still a large portion of the population that's kind of really insecure, and they kind of just paint their Instagram with positivity when they really aren't, or with confidence when they're really insecure about themselves. What's your advice on them, and how do they overcome that?
Get off social media for a while. Detox.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, we get with the social media, especially Instagram, Facebook, we live by the likes. How many people liked my picture, or what comments did I get? And we see this addiction with these young people and young adults, that if they didn't get X amount of likes, this whole new thing with Instagram not posting likes, there's been an uproar.
Yeah.
People going into meltdown. So I think if you're at a point where you're like, I need that, it's like any addiction, whether it be alcohol, drugs, whatever that is, you're an addict. You need to detox, and you need to get out in the real world. You need to put your phone down and actually interact with people. Get out in nature. I don't know, donate your time, work for a charity, do something that shows meaning and purpose, because we are so consumed with fake imagery. We're so consumed with being perfect and presenting ourselves. We lose what we're on this planet to do. Are we here just to look good and be fake? Or are we here to impact humanity somehow? How do we do that? The best way to do that is by donating your time, whether it be coaching, whether it be at a charity, whether it be an animal shelter, something. Give yourself back to the community, because put your phone down and just don't get involved. Really just detox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's only Australia's Instagram that took off the likes.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a positive thing for the kids?
Fantastic.
Yeah?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I don't know, I'd go 3 weeks and forget to post something. And people are like, why do you have this account? I'm like, oh, no. I forget. It's the same with Facebook. People are always on my case. You need to be more on your social media. And I just totally forget about it, because it's not the most important thing to me. But I grew up in a different era where it wasn't that way. I think it's a fantastic thing, because it feeds into that neuroses of needing approval from everybody else. If this picture didn't get 40,000 likes or 10,000 or 2 likes, I'm going to take it down. I never post anything like that again. People are spending money they don't have, time they don't have, presenting themselves in a way that they don't actually really exist, for some other fake person to like them. It's like, they're just as fake as you. Like, what is this? Barbie's dream house? Like, you know what I mean? What is the point? That's not your life. That's not reality. And I think I think it's a great thing that we have stopped that, and I hope the rest of the world follows suit.
Yeah. I definitely know some people who do take down some photos if they don't get enough attention. And honestly, I used to be guilty of that too when I was younger.
Yeah.
But I think I've just gotten over it, speaking to my mom, especially when she's like, post, people want to know what you're up to.
Yeah.
I think you just need to get over that barrier and be like, this is who I am. If you like me or not, doesn't matter, because I don't actually know who you are.
Yep.
If you're interested, then you are, then join me on this journey.
Yeah.
And I think people need to realize that side as well. That's what social media, I think, is for. It's connect with people who have the same kind of interest as you, not just following you just because that you got this or you're doing this kind of thing.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's a great tool. Social media is a fantastic tool. Look what it's done for our industry. In saying that, it's done a lot of negative. I mean, we don't have print magazines, we don't have all sorts of different things but that's an evolution, isn't it? We're all evolving consistently. So it now needs to take the place of something else. It's how you do that. And I think it was such a quick thing as well. We haven't learned how to navigate the rules, the laws, the long-term effects on it. It's a process, and I think we're all guilty of being addicted to social media in some way. And I think when you start removing yourself from your actual circle of friends and being focused on your online friends, you kind of go, oh, there's actual real people that like me. As you just said, these people don't know me, they don't know anything about me. And I think The thing I notice with celebrities and actors and singers is the more posts they get is usually from the photos of them not looking perfect. Yeah. You know, it's them just being general, because as a society we are consumed, obviously, with celebrity, but we want to know everything about them, like what they had for breakfast, where they walk, you know, like everything, not just the photo shoot. So when people are posting random, just everyday things, I think that's what gets the traction. That's what the public, anyone that follows you, is actually really interested in. It's not just the glamour shots, because we know all the work and effort goes into those. It's the general stuff that I think people actually like, because they're like, that's me. Yeah. That's exactly me. I add toast with Vegemite too, or whatever. They connect on that level, because not everyone's going to do a photo shoot every day, or present a TV show, or do a runway show. So it's the general day-to-day that your general followers and the public, or your fans, whatever you want to call them, connect to.
And in that way, then they also feel inspired, because say that you're a famous actor and I'm your follower, and you're doing the exact same things I'm doing. I'm like, oh well, I can actually be a famous actor too.
Yeah.
So it's a tool that can be used in so many ways, but it just depends on how you educate the people who are using it. Yeah. I think what I want to know now is, what do you want to do with, like, seeing that the fashion industry is evolving? How do you wish your teaching methods to evolve as well?
Oh, I'm pretty already evolved. No, everything changes, because, you know, kids these days are being taught different things in school. There's different rules. Their interaction is different, because they're less interactive with you. They're more on a screen. So the way you have to communicate with them is different. The skill set you have to give them is a bit different. I think I approach, I'm not going to change the way I approach things. I think it works for me. I have to look at the industry as a whole, and I think as the fashion industry or the pageant industry, whatever I'm working within, and going, where is that moving? Because if I don't move with it in some way, then I become obsolete. I become the dinosaur. So I have to look at it and go, I agree with that, I don't agree with that, but it's moving in that way. How do I navigate what I do, my way, to suit that in a way that I feel comfortable? So for me, I go, look at the industry and go, yeah, it's here. I feel comfortable being here in it. I will do that part, and I won't do the rest. Okay. Yeah.
With the things that are changing in the industry, there are a lot of positive things, as you said. What are some negative things that you wish would have more attention in changing?
We need to talk about how to get into the industry, the agency side of things, the photographic side of things, portfolios, what's required, because that's a trap. That's where a lot of people get trapped, because they know no better. How do I find an agent? Why do I have to pay $2,500 to this agency? Or why do I have to do this? Or what? I don't understand. So I think we need to have that kind of dialogue. And I think the more workshops that happen, or seminars, talks, webinars, whatever happens, I think we need to look at that side of the industry as well, because a lot of these kids, young adults, older adults, whatever, don't know how to get into the industries, and they're told by a particular person, you need to do this. And then they fork out their money and they do these things that they're not comfortable with, or whatever, and it leads to nothing, because the agency is really making its money off the photo shoots or whatever, not actually, you know, the work, because most agencies can only charge 10%. So, you know, if you're not working a lot in the industry, they're not making much money. Where they're making their money from? They're making it from their styling and their photo shoots and their portfolios. And there's nothing wrong with a photographer charging X amount, a large amount, whatever, because they're a reputable photographer. I think it's not so much the photographer, it's the collaboration of photographers and agencies and things like that that we need to shed a light on, so that people getting into the industry can navigate what feels right for them. Yeah.
In a nutshell, do you think somebody needs to pay $2,000 to get into an agency?
No. Nope. No, and no. If you speak to any of the top agents, like any of the top agencies, they don't want a portfolio submitted to them. They want very simple, plain photographs, very little makeup, so they can look at you as a blank canvas and go, this person has natural skill or natural beauty or they have an unusual look, or they suit, you know, runway, or they suit Europe or USA or wherever it is. They don't want glammed up magazine shots. That's their job, is to create that. So if you go to an agency and they say, look, you know, you need to get a big portfolio, no. Where you need your portfolio is to get some of the work, but at the end of the day, what happens with the portfolio is it's not the professional photographs for your portfolio that are in there. It becomes photos from work that you've done, like those industry shots, whether it be for a label or a magazine or whatever it is. So that's what becomes your portfolio. And in today's society with social media, we don't need print as much. Everything's all done online. So you don't need to pay for your reprints and all these different things like that, like you used to. So no, you don't have to pay $2,000 to get into the industry at all.
Yeah.
No.
With the students that you have, are you ever with them experiencing these things? Like they fall into these traps and you're like, that was a trap.
All the time. Yeah, and as a coach, I can't do things for them. Yeah. All I can do is give them the information, educate them. It's their decision. And as I said before, it comes down to failure. Sometimes you make a decision and go, oh, I should have listened to so-and-so. You learn, hopefully you learn from that. You know, everything is a lesson. There's a lesson in absolutely everything. Whether you learn the lesson or not, if you just keep hitting your head against a brick wall and you're not learning the lesson, that's pretty pointless. So if you go, okay, well, yeah, I should have listened. I've spent the money now, you know, so long as you learn the lesson. But I have it all the time. And I just go, I told you. But you're sitting there on the day, you made that decision. That's your call. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With social media and technology going on, do you think that makes it easier for people to educate themselves with industry? Or do you think it's just not being talked about enough?
I think it's difficult. We talked about false information. Yeah. I don't know about you. How many times I get online to research something and there will be one article saying one thing, an article saying something different, and they all contradict each other. Yeah. So by the end, you are so confused, you don't know what to believe. So it's easy because we have access to information, but we have access to so much information that there's too much choice. It's like going into the supermarket and have 14 different brands of the same thing. Which one do I buy? So it's difficult to educate ourselves in a way that we feel confident because there's so much information. Fitness, food, diet, everything contradicts each other. And I think it comes down to learning from people within the industry about the reality. Because I'm not biased. I'm not going to say, don't go there, don't do this. I'm going to say, these are the general rules of the industry. You choose what you do with that, but this is what's accepted, this is what is expected here. You play the game how you want. But that's the reality. I don't ever say, go to this agency or don't go to that one or whatever. That's not my job. My job is to say, it's important for you to know these are the rules, what's accepted. Educate yourself, but get online and you will confuse yourself. So I think it comes through places like this where we can educate. Because talking to industry professionals, people that are in the industry, people that are working in the industry or been in the industry or have seen the evolution of the industry, they're the ones you should listen to. Because anyone can write a blog, you know, anyone can have a website. So it's good that, you know, we have that information, but it's so confusing. It's the same with social media because someone's going to say something that they want you to hear, or they're sponsored by someone you don't know about. Yeah. We don't know the reality of what's behind that. So you've still got to be cautious. Yeah.
Sometimes it still is really up to you what you believe and what you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. As a coach, what do you think that says about the future of the next generation models?
I think in some ways it's harder for them because it's so confusing. It's so much around. I think I'll tell you what I would like. I would like it to go back to more opportunity in this country for up-and-comers. Because, as I was saying before, it's so hard to get your experience. And unless you're getting experience in pageants, if you don't want to be in a pageant, sometimes you enter a pageant just to get that runway experience because there's nothing else. So I would really love young labels, fresh labels, agencies, all sorts of things working together again to give experience to young models and photos and different things like that. So it exposes the industry a bit more to the general public as well, because we only see the glam, we only see the high end, we don't see the upper comer, you know, unless we see the pageant. And pageants aren't for everyone. So that didn't really answer your question, but but that's what I would like. I would really like to see it go backwards a little bit, because when it was the way it was, we had so much support and we were working every single weekend and doing different things, and it was creative, it was a great vibe. We don't have those opportunities now, and I think in that way it's harder for models, because you have to be so perfect so quickly. You can't afford to make mistakes, and that puts extra pressure. Whereas, you know, back in the day, you could afford to make a few mistakes and you could learn, because it wasn't broadcast on, you know, to millions of people, you know. And I think the goal with social media is get the most followers. But the most followers you have, every time you make a mistake, it goes out to 5 million people or 2,000 people. We don't get that opportunity to do that in a venue where there's 25 people anymore. So I would like to see an opportunity, I think, for young models, kids and young adults and older adults, whoever's starting out in the industry, to have that opportunity to express their craft and learn about their craft in a professional way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be really good.
Yeah.
So
that's our goal, right?
Yes,
that's
definitely.
What we're starting our own revolution. We're going to do that.
Yeah, with Runway Academy. Get as many students.
I love it.
Teach them the good and the bad, because they need to know
and
that.
Put on some shows and get this industry kicking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
That's what it needs.
Well, I mean, I know people that are starting their own fashion labels, and it's difficult for them too, because how do they get their clothes seen? You know, so I think there is a need in multiple areas. You've just got to band together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With all the experience that you have and everything you've observed and seen, heard, and whatever it is, what if you could do one project, doesn't matter how much it costs or what it takes to complete it, what would you do and why?
That's really difficult, because as you can tell by our conversations, I'm not a one thing person.
Definitely not.
No, I don't get bored, but I need to do multiple things. I think what I would love...
Just one thing.
Oh, you're making it hard for me. Can I do one thing that has lots of things in it?
I guess so.
Okay, so it would be, I guess, like things like Runway Academy. It would be create or work with a company and create a space that is almost like a production company, where it produces seminars, workshops, tuition, mentorship, produces shows, fashion shows, does photo shoots, all sorts of things within that scene. So like a one-stop shop kind of thing, where you can go get advice, legal advice, counseling, whatever it is, fitness, dietary, styling, you know, or maybe you just, I don't know, you don't know your body shape. What do I dress like? What do I need to dress for my body shape? How many people don't know how to dress for their body shape? Or don't want to be a runway, but they can't wear heels. They don't know how to walk in heels. Just everything from everyday people that want to do something to better themselves, to project an image, a more confident image, to people that really want to work in the industry, whether it be on runway or TV, presenting, because modeling's not just about walking down a runway. All these models have to talk to camera. They all have to present a label. They have to act. That's what diversity is. You have to do that if you want to be successful in any industry, particularly ours, the creative industry. So for me, it would be to have a one-stop shop that can do all that, because then I don't have to just do one thing. See? I got what I wanted.
You found a loop in the question.
I did, didn't I? I got it round back to the way I wanted. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It was amazing to have you behind the lens.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we've learned a lot of things from the start until now, and I definitely hope to see more from Quintin James. We learned that you never experience just one thing. You'll always have experiences from different areas of life, and it's up to you and how you take it. And it always has to be in an outlook where you feel educated and empowered and more confident in yourself. Thank you so much for listening with us here at Behind the Lens. We'll see you guys next time. From being a young gymnast and acrobat, he became a dancer, an actor, and a whole multitude of things in the performing arts, entertainment industry. He then became a coach for a variety of things. A runway model coach is one of his professions today, and he's working to educate students about the modeling industry, its goods and also its bad and ugly side. Because you not only need to know the benefits of your work, but also the requirements that it needs for you to be successful, so that you can have a happy, successful life, but also a very colorful and a very fully lived life. This is Behind the Lens, and we'll see you guys next time.